Welcome to Weathered Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Hello again, and welcome in everybody to the 11th episode now of Weathered Questions. My name is Kai O'Mara. I'm joined here by meteorologist Jan Kaj, and it's been a fun ride so far, over 500 downloads. We've appreciated all the feedback you've given to us as well. We thank you for listening, and we thank you for all the different types of feedback that we're getting, and feel free to leave a review for us too, so we know how we're doing. Tell your friends and tell your family, and encourage listeners to submit questions as well, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to be answering your questions on this program. I've got a question though for Jan Kaj, because Jan's getting one of those once in a lifetime jealous experiences, because I am going to be watching the Iowa State Cyclones on television. You, on the other hand, are hopping on a plane, and you're going to be right there.
I know.
You're in Ireland. All right, what are you most looking forward to? Aside from the football game, what else is on your list when you get over there?
I mean, everything. I'm truly looking forward to everything. Yeah. We're going to see so many cool things, you know, the classic sites like Cliffs of Moher, and then, you know, going around Dublin, getting to see all the, you know, fun pubs and stuff. And I think it'll be especially fun to get to see those, you know, little pep rallies and stuff just kind of popping up, just kind of having, you know, anybody who is a loyal Cyclone fan has heard of Hilton South. I mean, so yep. now we're creating Jack Trice. I don't know if it's east or west. I guess it's probably east.
It's something. Jack Trice across the water.
Yeah, Jack Trice across the pond.
I don't know. So how many days are you going to be there? You've probably got a week slated over there?
Yeah, little over a week that we'll be out. Yeah. So don't worry, we're gonna pre-record next week's episode, so you will not be without next week. But
yes,
yeah, we're gonna be gone for a little bit, so it should be really fun. I'm looking forward to it, and you know, I know my husband is too. We just love traveling, so. Always great.
Take a lot of pictures. Don't forget your passport.
Thank you.
You'll find out very quickly.
That's true. I don't know if they'll let me out of Iowa without that.
Well, I would hope not. But that's definitely one of those jealousy trips. So we'll be playing soccer that weekend, and then we're going to be tuning into the game whenever we can. And then the first day of school is right after that for our district. So
summer flew right by. It flew by.
It sure did. Did. It's been really... You know, and depending on where you're all listening to us from, it's kind of been an extreme summer in some cases. It's been awfully wet in Iowa. Awfully really wet this year. Yeah, very much
it's
so.
Very, very Ireland-esque, getting us ready for that, right?
Yep, you got it. Exactly.
Well, it has been an especially wet summer for us, and a lot of folks, you know, looking at the radar, looking at what's going to be happening, how things are changing. And that brings us to our first question of the day. And today we're going to be talking about the models. So this question says that meteorologists refer to, quote, the models. What are they? How do they work? So Kai, can you dive into that a little bit for us?
I can, and I will start this segment off by saying, in complete transparency, I am not a modeler. I use the models as guidance, but I don't actually write the code for it. But I can tell you enough about models, I think, to make things usable for the everyday audience and why some work better than others. So there are tons of models out there. And some of what are called the global models, which are a bit of a lower resolution, so they can run all across the globe, actually rerun themselves in various iterations over and over and over and over again. And maybe at the very beginning of the data set, it says, all right, this is what I think is starting off, and now I'm going to extrapolate the weather from here. Well, its neighbor might say, well, I'm going to go 1 degree warmer than you, and I'm going to extrapolate out. And then the other neighbor goes, well, I'm going to go a ½ degree lower than you, and I'm going to extrapolate out. And you get what's called an ensemble, which gives us good indications of what might be coming. The models will input radar data, satellite data, surface observations, upper air data, and I'm certain other things that I'm not thinking of. And they will go through a bunch of series of processes that are far too complicated to discuss on this program. But it is part of the reason. And this circles back around, I believe, to episode 1 or 2, Jan, about math and meteorology. Because it is not as simple as just standing in front of a wall and talking, because in order to get that partly cloudy in 72, there is so much math behind the scenes that has to happen. Because if you take the air down near the ground and you start lifting it up in the atmosphere, it's actually going to expand a little bit because the pressure is different, which means its temperature is going to change, which means its density is going to change, which means its moisture content may also change depending on what it's undergoing. So the modeling takes care of all that. There are high resolution models that people plaster all over the internet. But back when I was in college, we had just some really blocky models. And so as a result, it was just a lot of big blotches of
Yeah.
precipitation. When the new high res models came out, it was a really big game changer that almost looked like a real radar. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference between the two. And apps nowadays use that stuff routinely,
For
actually.
sure. Yeah, that was, it was back in, I just looked it up quick, episode 5, that we talked about kind of how meteorology and its intersections with physics and mathematics and stuff. And that is, absolutely one of the reasons that we do have such a basis in calculus and, those calculus based physics. It's because of modeling, right? And to Kai's point, we are not modelers. This is not
Right.
our expertise, but we use models a lot as meteorologists. So we do know the ins and outs that way. And one of the things that Kai kind of mentioned there is those blockier models and then those high res models. So there's different kinds of models, and you will see different outputs put up by various people, whether they are experts in meteorology or maybe just armchair meteorologists. People will post stuff, and it's important to understand what that data is, how it's best utilized, and also the fact that as those models go further and further and further out in time, naturally things are, a small change now is going to lead to a bigger and bigger and bigger change later. And so just because a specific model maybe says that there's going to be 12 feet of snow in location X in 3 weeks, that's probably not something that you should hang your hat on and run with and, go buy a snowblower for. But if it's 3 days out, or even still a couple more days out, and you're seeing that trend continuing, that's something that we look for in that modeling.
Yep. And when it comes time to just being practical, whenever we've got a practical application of modeling, for everybody listening, it's generally going to be, what's my daytime high? Am I expecting any precipitation? And what's my wind? But I will tell you, just looking off the screen here, I'm just going to read a couple of really oddball fields that you probably never think about. Why don't we check our minus 10 Celsius isothermal reflectivity, Jan?
Oh, yes, that's
Or
important.
how about we do lightning threat 3, or the 80 meter wind, very important actually in wind turbines.
Fair.
Mean surface level pressure, that's fairly common. But then you've also got storm surface runoff. You've got temperatures and winds and relative humidity at various levels of the atmosphere. You have max updrafts and downdrafts and all this behind the scenes stuff that you'll never see your television meteorologist do, because it is far too complicated to convey. But when it comes right down to, if we're forecasting something like a chance of storms with gusty winds, there's a really good chance that we've got some of these off air or off camera parameters that we're looking at that are tipping us off that, okay, historically, whenever we see these parameters, we usually get storms that are going to do this. So it just goes to show there are dozens and dozens and dozens of model fields that are out there that a lot of it, especially through NOAA, is actually publicly available. So if you've got an ambitious family member who's really into weather and wants to go look at some of the model fields, they're all out there, including smoke, which we've seen a lot more of this summer. You can see all the smoke fields too. So you just got to find it and then play with the data, but it's out there.
Yeah, that data is readily available. We're very lucky to have that here across the US, that we do have such great weather data just publicly available and free of charge for us. One other thing I do want to say here before we get off the topic entirely of modeling is a kind of follow-up question, I guess, maybe to that is that we're often asked, like, what's the best model, right?
Yeah.
And it's not an easy answer. It's the truthful answer is that there isn't one. They all have their own strengths. They all have their own weaknesses. Those global models, those ones that maybe are kind of, like I said, a little blockier or not quite as high of resolution, that cover larger swaths of the area. Those are really good for predicting things maybe a little further out or either in time or in distance, and they'll have their own strengths as well, whereas those high res models are going to be much better for smaller, more mesoscale or tighter knit forecasts. and tighter in time as well. And again, different variables based on, is this one better at forecasting snow, or has this one been trending too warm, or, that there's so many different parameters that we're looking at. All of those things are going into a forecast anytime that we're building it. And there's never, at least I would hope, a good meteorologist at least would never be only relying on a single model, or never changing that. You're usually getting a forecast based on multiple different things and different modeling and parameters. And that's the importance of having that human behind your forecast, that meteorologist actually behind your forecast, and not just taking weather models verbatim, that there is somebody interpolating that data.
Yep. Well, and just like human beings, everybody's entitled to a bad day. Models have bad days too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they will totally whiff on a snowstorm, and other times they'll nail it right down to the inch. So you just got to use everything that's at your disposal. So that gets us into our next question here. This actually happened to us up on a family vacation. And I was up in the living room and kind of watching things and trying to figure out how we were going to plan things out. One of our family members opens up a weather app. 7 p.m., 100% chance of rain. I said, oh, wow, that's bold. And then an hour later,
it was
went
7
down
p.m.
to 15%. And he goes, well, okay, well, that just went away. So, Jan, why does my weather app always change the forecast? That's the question being posed.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of a great iteration from where we just were, right? We'll just keep following that. Models are straight weather data, straight output. So typically, a lot of your weather apps doesn't really honestly matter what weather app you use. Most weather apps are going to be model driven. And so, yes, there are going to be some, like your local TV station's weather app, for example, that will have a person behind it that is maybe potentially manipulating that data some way, and looking at the forecast and changing those numbers up or down in a way that they know is more true to your region, or your specific area based on current events or typical weather patterns and stuff. But in general, a lot of the weather apps that like you'll automatically get on your phone, and the ones that most commonly people are using, are straight model data. And so if they are those higher res models that are updating more frequently, that's typically when you're going to see, usually every hour. It's usually not on the hour, it's usually a little bit ahead of the hour, but typically you'll see at routine intervals, at least, a difference in that forecast. And that's just new model data coming in. So like we were talking about, it's that different input that's changing that forecast. So maybe the temperature shot up faster in the last 3 hours than was previously expected. And so now that model is taking in that new data and it's adjusting. Or maybe the humidity is higher than was previously expected. And so now it's taking in that new current data and it's adjusting its future forecast based on what is happening out in the atmosphere right now.
Yep. Absolutely. We see that more actually in the hourly products than we do the day-to-day products. And there's a fascinating journal out there that's got a peer-reviewed research article in it. And there's a fine line that we as meteorologists, but also we as weather product consumers, just the everyday public, we want to blend between consistency and accuracy. Mm-hmm. It is nice to be 100% accurate. And one of the only ways to do that is just simply tell the current condition all the time, because that's 100%.
That's not very helpful to anyone.
It's not very helpful, though. And to the point of, was that a bad forecast when it went from 100% down to 15% and it turned out partly sunny that evening? That adjustment was actually accurate, but its consistency was horrible, because you went to bed that night, you had your chance. You went in the morning, you saw it again, and then an hour later, just all of a sudden went away. So now we're inconsistent, but our accuracy went up. So there tends to be a good marriage there in the middle between, people seem to desire some area of consistency, knowing that it might change. But then also, if it's raining outside, don't stick with a partly cloudy forecast, because clearly it's off the rails. So something's got to adjust,
absolutely,
and be totally different. So there's a good chance that's what's going on. It's tough to tell exactly which weather apps operate that way. It seems to me like a lot of the hourly forecasts, even with television stations, will operate that way. But I can tell you that television stations' day-to-day forecasts are very often entered by the meteorologist on shift. So therefore, if you see, hand typed phrasing that you've seen your meteorologist use on the air before, there's a good chance he or she was actually entering that in there. The hourly, quite simply, knowing that their day-to-day load is so high, they may not have time to tweak that all the time. And they may let automation take the hourly because it's such a short fused forecast, whereas they'll manually put it in some of the extended stuff.
Yeah. And that's a good thing to remember in order to be a good consumer of weather, is that maybe you don't take that 85 verbatim. Maybe, okay, it could be,
Right.
Anywhere from 82 to 87, right? Mid 80s. It would be, I think, a lot nicer world if we could just put mid 80s, upper 80s, low 90s for temperatures instead of having to put a specific number. But especially the further out in time that you're getting with that forecast, take that number as a range. Take that precipitation percentage. If it's on that lower end, like there's a small chance of rain. On that upper end, okay, there's a decent chance of rain versus
Right.
80% chance of rain, it's definitely going to rain. It's like, no, there's a chance that it's a decent chance that it could, but there is still that small chance that it won't. And if it's 5, 6, 7 days out, give it some time because it will change.
It'll change. Yeah, the data will definitely change as you go forward for sure.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's an excellent segue into our trivia question for the day. So we're going to stick on the models, and we want to know if you know which of these models is not an American weather model. So we have a couple different answer options here for you. A is the ECMWF. We have some great names for these weather models, right? B, the GFS. C, we call the HRR or the HRRR. So there's 3 R's there. And D is the NAM or NAM. We'll give you some time to think about that. Again, which of these is not an American weather model? The ECMWF, the GFS, the HRR, or the NAM. And we'll be back right after the break.
My name's Bill. I've been a window expert at Hometown Restyling for 20 years. I love working in Eastern Iowa. These are neighborhoods I've known my whole life. I treat these homes like my own. I'm a craftsman. I want to know this job is installed correctly, that it measures up in every way. Trust your project with an expert like me. Hometown Restyling, your local residential remodeler. Visit hometownrestyling.com.
Today's trivia question.
All right, let's get into that trivia question. One more reminder. We're looking for which of the following is not an American weather model. Your answer options were A, the ECMWF, B, the GFS, C, the HRR, or D, the NAM. Guy, what's the answer?
The answer is the ECMWF, otherwise known in the meteorology community as the European model.
Yes.
That's the one of those 4 that is not an American weather model. The other one, the GFS, is called the Global Forecast System. It's run by the NOAA here in the United States. The HRRR or HRR is the High Resolution Rapid Refresh, which is also run here in the United States. And then the NAM is the North American model. And the keys about this, especially when you're talking about how to apply this stuff to forecasting, if you're trying to do hurricane stuff, 2 of those models won't really work very well for you because the North American model only deals with North America, and the HRRR, as some people call it, only generally deal with even a slightly smaller domain. So as a result, they're not even seeing the Atlantic. So you kind of have to use global models out there in the Atlantic or some special hurricane ones. But there's model wars going on all the time between which is better, the European or the GFS, and
all the time.
It depends on the day. It depends on the day. And yes, there's skill scores that say this and this and this, but we've leaned on the European before in our forecast career and gotten burned, and we've leaned on the GFS and also gotten burned. So, I mean, you can get burned by any of them. You just got to look at them and say, does this conceptually make sense? The European throws down 11 inches of snow and there's only 0.2 of an inch of water, and you go 50-to-1 ratio snow, probably not happening. So you got to look at that and go, okay, that's kind of weird. But that kind of moves us on here with, you're talking about weather models. Now we're just going to throw some terminology into all this, Jan. So the question here is, can you use climate and weather interchangeably?
No. That's the answer. Next question.
And why can't we? Why can't
Yeah.
we? Because then we'll move on.
So climate is maybe it's a more hot button word these days, but in general we use it just to say this is the weather that you would expect in a certain area. Weather, as I just used in that definition of climate, is something that you're getting day to day. So today's weather is sunny. Tomorrow's weather will be rainy. However, the climate of our area is that we would normally have a wet spring, or that we would normally have temperatures in the mid to upper 90s during the late summer or something like that. Those would be climate. The way that I like to refer to it as with my kiddos when I'm doing school visits is that climate is your entire closet. Okay, you've got your parka, you've got your swimsuit, you've got your shorts, you've got your pants, you've got everything in there. Weather is what you have on today. So you are, you're wearing what you need for today. Climate is the entire gamut of everything. So
love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're not interchangeable. They are different things. They do relate. And some people do try to use them interchangeably, but they are quite different.
Well, and a great application of this as we go into the fall is when's the average first frost? A lot of times that's where we use climate data for gardening and farming as well, is when is that first average time that we really get that first frost? Every year it changes. We don't have frost on the exact same date, but we have an idea in our mind of, it's probably going to be late September, mid-October, somewhere in there.
Yep.
We don't expect it at the end of August, but we also don't expect it to wait till Thanksgiving, So
climate's what you expect.
Very different things.
Weather is what you get.
Yep. That's an excellent way to think about that as well. Our old agronomy professor taught us that at Iowa State. Dr. Arrett told us that too. So, you can't use them interchangeably. They're related, but it's just not quite that simple.
Well, using our newfound knowledge here, Kai, it's been seemingly a pretty quiet season so far as tornadoes and hurricanes go. We've had a lot of rain, but we haven't had a lot of real active, storm making weather. Some decent windstorms, I guess, across the country, but
yeah, it's been different in that case. I would have to look and see, because I need to figure out if the Storm Prediction Center has a database on this or not. But I think we're up to at least 3 derechos in the Midwest.
Yeah,
maybe 4. So that I believe is well above average, especially with North Dakota's bad luck. Tornado wise, the state of Iowa went, I think, without a tornado for a long time in the spring. I need to remember the statistics.
I think it was the entire month of
May.
May. Yeah.
Yeah. That went without an entire tornado, first time since 2010. And you know how the summer of 2010 turned out, Jan?
Tell me. I do not recall.
Wet.
Oh, no?
Wet. So it was wet and humid. We had several large flash flood events that year, even in the absence of tornadoes. So that's one thing to think about. Quiet tornado seasons don't bother me at all. It started off kind of quick and then it paused, and it has not restarted yet. We do emphasize caution, though, that the fall can sometimes ramp up again. Mm-hmm. We've seen that a lot, especially it seems like November lately, for whatever reason. It really ramps up again. And then as for hurricanes, we follow this a lot in the job that I'm in right now. And June and July are typically very quiet. Later August, it ramps up, and then September is the peak. So we've got some tropical cyclones that are starting to get their act together right now, and it seems like we're starting to see more circulations get going. So that could potentially be more as we get going. But the thing that we've got to remember about tropical weather, and this is a whole public perception thing. Let's just say the National Hurricane Center, and I'm just making this up. Let's just say they forecasted 16 named storms, and they actually got it spot on. Mm-hmm. But all 16 stayed over water.
Yep.
People would say that they busted, when in reality, they actually aced it. They did perfect. So that's going to be interesting, because we've gone through the alphabet already. We're up to letter E as of this recording. We're up to letter E. And we'll just have to see how it all trends, because it only takes one. I mean, as we saw last year, it only takes 1 or 2 to just totally mess people up. So we'll wait and we'll see, but it's something that I've got to look at pretty much every day now as to what's going on in the tropics. And one of my checklists is to look at the Hurricane Center and see what's up. But June and July are typically quiet. So I think nothing's out of the ordinary there. But we will see how August and September trend. I have a feeling they're going to trend up. So we might be talking more about hurricanes the next several weeks.
Exactly. I would agree. Like, and like you noted with tornado season, right? It kind of has shifted back a little bit. There really doesn't seem to be a true quote unquote tornado season anymore. It's just kind of elongated, and there's more and more opportunity for them outside of that traditional season. And so just with both of these, important to remember that just because it's been quiet doesn't mean it's going to stay quiet. Doesn't mean, to Kai's point, that one storm that's going to be impactful isn't still going to happen. So continue to stay vigilant and continue to pay attention to those forecasts as we move into the fall.
Well, it has sure shut up the population that says the storms always go around us this year. That group of people all of a sudden disappeared. But they were around for the drought years for sure. And now we've kind of flopped back to the wet side again. So
it's easy to forget a good forecast.
Or you just look at radar and you go, I'm in between a shower. I'm going to take the dog out right now because I know he's not going to be able to handle it if it's wet. That's literally what we did this past weekend when we had, an epic rain event come through. And at the height of that rain event, I measured a peak rainfall rate in my weather station of 4.72 inches per hour.
Whew.
That's like tropical storm style rain. And there was a little hole on the radar. And I said, all right, Bear, we're going out right now. Go quick. Go pee, dude. Come on. Get it done. And then we came back.
Did he
listen?
It was all
good. Yes.
Good.
He went. He went very quick. We had about a 5-minute window. So
puppy training's going well.
It is. We've had our share of accidents, but they're getting fewer and fewer. And he's sleeping through the night. So that's a hugely important side effect of all this. Which is good.
Well, good. Well, we'll check in next week with how puppy training's going for you, Kai. But we are about out of time here today. So as always, if you have any questions that were sparked from today's discussion or just lingering on your mind about anything and everything weather, please submit them to weatheredquestions@gmail.com. We'd love to hear them. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Until next week, though, stay safe.